Welcome to the Dojo Talk Podcast. Please remove them shoes before entry.
Semester is here, and you still have not taken off your shoes.
Yeah. Living every day to define man's mission. Look into the sky for divine transmission. Deaf man's vision makes the blind man listen. Eyes on the prize, this is blind ambition. Thank you. Blind ambition.
What up? Welcome to another episode of the Dojo Talk Podcast. I am your host, Serial Sensei, and we are on episode 21. Is it 21? I gotta fact check my own podcast. I don't know if it's 21. Yes. All right, we're on episode 21. It's a nice Sunday morning. Not sure how the weather is outside. I'm assuming it doesn't feel too bad. It's been pretty decent here the last couple of days. Real quick before I get started, something I wanted to shout out probably a couple weeks ago. It just kept slipping my mind. Open Mike Eagle, who I'm pretty sure was on my top 20 list for last year, as far as albums that got released for his album Hella Personal Film Festival, which he did with Paul White. But he and comedian Baron Vaughn are getting a show on Comedy Central that will be entitled The New Negroes. It does not have a release date yet, as far as I know, but just wanted to give that a shout out. I've been a fan of his since Dark Comedy, which I can't remember what year that came out. It's been a couple of years though. That was the first album he put out that I was familiar with, and kind of made me a fan of his work, and I've kind of just been following him ever since then. He also actually has a pretty good podcast, or had one. I don't know if he records any episodes anymore. It's definitely been a while, but he had a podcast called Secret Skin. So give that a look up. I think he recorded about 56 episodes, and the last episode he did was with Mark Maron, and that was like last year, I believe, in like April. But obviously he's a busy dude. He's getting TV shows, so I guess you don't, maybe have time to record and such. But yeah, man, give definitely shout outs and congrats to him for getting the show. Really, really talented dude, really unique rapper. He's definitely somebody just different. Definitely different. But yeah, shout outs to him. Give him a look, if you haven't checked out any of his music, and be on the lookout for his TV show, which will be airing on Comedy Central. I'm guessing maybe at some point this year or maybe next year. But yeah, just wanted to give him a quick mention. And also, playoffs, NBA going on right now. Shout out to my Spurs. we made it to the second round. First, shout out to Memphis, man. That series was a scary series, man. I mean, I was sure we were gonna win, but those games pretty much were all pretty close. Like, Memphis is a really scrappy team, so I knew that series was gonna be tough. I was hoping we could have put them away a little earlier, but they took us to 6 games, but we edged them out. We got Houston coming up next. That's gonna be a fun series. So yeah, shout out to my Spurs. I'm hoping. I really want to see my Spurs play Golden State. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully, we'll see. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I guess sticking on sports for a little bit. I'll go a little bit into the NFL draft. I think I've only mentioned it maybe like once before on this podcast, but my 2 teams in the NFL are the Colts and the Cowboys. As far as drafts, I'm pretty happy with what we did. Both teams, well, I'll say the Colts needed a lot more than the Cowboys. The Colts need everything, just from O-line to D-line to secondary, just everything. But yeah, we grabbed, I think the Colts got Hooker from Ohio State, so we got some help at safety. And I think they drafted all defense, and I'm pretty sure the Cowboys did too, which was my concern for that team also, especially that secondary, which, yeah, I'm not gonna go into it. I don't want to spend too long going into it, but as far as my squads, I'm happy with with what they did, definitely addressing needs that we had as far as defense, pretty much sticking all defense. So hopefully they pan out. Those players do good. And shout out to Deshaun Watson, who, he slipped to like number 10 or 11, something like that, and ended up with Houston. That's a good spot, I think, for him, though. Because if obviously if he would have gotten picked up earlier, he would have went to, a team that's probably not so good. So now you get to go to Houston, where you got a few weapons. You have a great defense that will keep you in games. So it's not like he has to come in and be Superman from jump. And I think that's a good look for him. I hope he pans out, man. I was surprised that some other quarterbacks went before him. A man from North Carolina who's named Trubisky, whose name I think that's his name. He he goes to Chicago. I honestly don't envision that going too well, but I don't know. To be honest, I didn't watch Trubisky much in college, but from like what I've seen, I don't know. He doesn't look all that impressive. Not that he looks bad, but he doesn't scream out, "I'm the number one quarterback in the country." But hey, what do I know? Tom Brady got picked in the 6th round, and he's got like 8 Super Bowl rings or whatever. So you never know. We'll see how he pans out. And my man from Texas Tech, I forget his name. He went pretty early to Kansas City. Pretty sure he'll probably be behind Alex Smith for a little bit, but yeah, I was surprised those dudes went before Deshaun did. And then the Mr. Irrelevant pick is Chad Kelly. And he went to Denver. That's an interesting pick. I think though I know he has his moments, but I think he's a decent quarterback. I mean, and you got him at the last pick anyway, so it's not like you threw buku money at him. I hope he gets a shot. I don't know how he'll do, but I would be interested to see, what he can do in Denver. Kind of a similar situation with Deshaun, as to where you go to a team that, they have weapons, they have talent. So if they throw you in there, it's not like you're by yourself. You got a defense that can hold you down. You got playmakers on offense, so you don't have to come in and be Superman. They're not depending on you to, you're not like the second coming that has to save the franchise. But we'll see. This season this NFL season is gonna be interesting. But that's pretty much all I got for sports talk. I know the Klitschko fight happened this weekend, which I watched yesterday. I guess me and the Anti-Cool will probably end up talking about that and probably a few other combat sports related things. Oh, and also real quick, I wanted to mention it's gonna happen hopefully this week, barring schedules and nothing crazy happens. But I will be having my first guest. I don't really count the Anti-Cool as a guest. He's a co-host. We're like, it's like my co-host roommate. so I don't really count him as like a guest. We're both here pretty much every week. But I locked in a guest for an episode that I'll hopefully be recording sometime this week. It will be anime related. Somebody I've met through the interweb world, as I do everybody. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't I've never recorded with a guest other than the Anti-Cool. So I'm looking forward to it. And the anime we will be reviewing. I'll save it all for the episode. I'm not going to tell you guys. I'm not going to tell y'all what I'm reviewing. But it's a dope show, though, man. It's a dope show. And the reason I wanted to get someone else to talk about it is because I enjoyed it so much. So be on the lookout for that. And I guess let's get to the music. So 2 albums on deck today. I know I'm very late in reviewing this, but hey, man, I got between keeping up with music, keeping up with the combat sports world, which crazy stuff seems to just happen like every weekend. Tyson Nam is head kicking people, and Matt Hamill still fights in 2017. But but between music and trying to somewhat keep up on my anime, keep up on my TV shows, some things just kind of get lost, or I don't get around to them as quickly as I want to. But first album on deck is Kendrick Lamar's Damn. And I will also be talking about, probably briefly, because I got a feeling this episode is going to be long, but I've definitely got to give a shout out to the homie Marcus D for his latest project, Melancholy Prequel, the Redux. And yeah, so we will talk about those two albums. So first, I got to start with K. Dot. So Kendrick Lamar's Damn with a period. It was released on April 14th. I'm not going to go super deep, because I'm pretty sure by now you guys have probably heard tons of other reviews, and I'm the kid who was late to the party, but, everybody had all these conspiracies. Oh, it's coming out April 7th, and then it comes out on Good Friday, and it's like, oh, if it came out on Good Friday, he's going to resurrect on Sunday, and Jesus get 7 Dragon Balls and wish him back. Crazy stuff. Whatever people are talking about. But I'm not going to go that deep into the theory and all that extra stuff that I'm pretty sure you guys have seen and or heard. I'm going to just kind of keep it strictly with the music. So I'll start off with Kendrick. Just a brief rundown of kind of like my history with him and his music. So I'll say up front, probably get scolded for this, but whatever. I feel like everybody else loves Kendrick, and I just like him. I think he's cool. He's a good artist. I don't like him as much as I feel like other people do, but I kind of similar to a Drake. I understand why he's so popular, and he's earned it. He definitely stands out amongst his peers. He manages to pretty much make the world stop, whether you love him or you don't like him, or however you may feel. When he drops, he makes people pay attention. So I think that in itself speaks to his talent. Like I said, whether you like him or not, you pay attention to what it is that he does. Most people do. So I got to the Kendrick party, to be honest, kind of late. I've never listened. I've never listened to Section 80 all the way through. Go ahead, get your rocks ready and stone me. Yeah, I never listened to Section 80 all the way through. I listened to a couple tracks, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy's pretty good. Kind of the same with Good Kid, Mad City. That's another album. Go ahead, scold me. I don't care. I listened to partially through, and I was like, oh, so this is then. When Section 80 came out, of course he got a lot of praise, but I feel like when Good Kid, Mad City dropped, it was almost like this guy's the chosen one, he was Neo in the Matrix. So, I heard a few tracks off that, and I was like, oh, so this is the guy that everybody is, drooling over, pretty much. And I don't say that to mean I was hating on him or I thought he was bad. It's just, like I said, I liked him, I enjoyed his music, but I didn't love him like everyone else does. And I think my thing with Kendrick is I'll listen to a project, which the first full length project I listened to him was To Pimp a Butterfly, which I enjoyed. I love how eccentric and just the musicality of that album. I know a lot of people, for them it wasn't easy on the ears, but I love weird stuff like that. So for me, that was right up my alley. But yeah, I listened to that and I'm like, yeah, this is a really good album. But he's one of those dudes I listen to, but I don't really return to his projects. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. It's just for me personally, they're not the type of albums that I go back and listen to repeatedly. But nevertheless, Damn came out. Why not? Gotta pick this up. Especially after Joey had dropped his project, and I'm still riding the Joey wave. I still love that album, but I gave the Joey album, I put it down for a little bit. I was like, let's see what Kendrick's up to. Let's see what's going on. Album covers really minimal, and you look at the track listing and the names of the tracks, and you kind of start to form your own ideas of what you think it might be about. And then I saw he had U2 on a song. I was like, oh no, this is going to be an interesting listen. So what I pretty much got from this album, like I said, I'm not going to go too deep, but like there is kind of a lot to unpack. But from what I got, I guess overall from the album, definitely lots of religious themes, lots of, mostly I guess to sum it all up in a nice little knot and bow, is pretty much Kendrick is in a place where he's trying to, live the righteous path, so to speak. He's trying to get closer to God, but at the same time, he's kind of still he's still dwelling in the earth realm and still kind of wants the things that earth has to offer in terms of, I have this success, I want this success, I want the money, I want, those earthly those earthly possessions, so to speak. But it's kind of like this internal struggle as to where he's like, I shouldn't want these things, these possessions, this success shouldn't really define me. This isn't what I should be after. I should be more focused on, my spiritual self, my spiritual path, trying to get closer to God, trying to be righteous, so on and so forth. But he's stuck in that struggle as to where, these earthly possessions, while I know I don't really need them, they feel pretty great. So he's kind of he's in that balance of like power struggle, and that just kind of plays throughout this whole album. I guess I'll just jump right into it. This album opens up really interesting with the track Blood, with him taking a walk, and he comes across this elderly woman, and he offers her help, and I think she said to him, like, are you lost? And she's like, yeah, you just lost your life, and she kills him. So already man, you can interpret that track, I guess, probably in a few different ways as to whether maybe that older woman like represented like the devil, or I'm pretty sure you can interpret it a few different ways. But it was just a really interesting kickstart to the album. A really just nice intro to kind of grab your attention. And then it starts off with DNA, which is, I don't say it's my favorite, but it's up there. That's at least like top 2. Love the video too that Kendrick did with Don Cheadle. If you guys haven't seen that, I'll leave a link to the description below so y'all can check that out. But the video was dope. But I love this album, and what I was interested in to hear was, coming off To Pimp a Butterfly, like sonically, what would this album sound like? And then DNA comes on, and I basically get a trap banger. But like, it's a good trap banger though, and like the trap sound doesn't always do much for me. But what I appreciate about Kendrick, what he did on this album, I mean, not every track is, necessarily trap style, but this probably, at least sonic wise, is one of his more accessible projects, especially within the last few releases, especially compared to Pimp a Butterfly. So you start off with DNA, and just out the gate, the album is just stupid hype. But underneath all of the, underneath this mean beat and everything, if you pay attention to what he's actually saying, he's basically talking about the things that kind of make him who he is, But it's a real interesting take on, the things that make him what he is, the things that make him great, the things that make him not so great, just kind of literally explaining his lineage and his DNA. And it really is a lot to dig into underneath of a trap beat, which when I hear songs like this, I definitely appreciate that he can take something that sounds really accessible, but make it still kind of like pack it with content. So sonically it's enjoyable, but lyrically you still get something from it if you're actually paying attention to the words. I'm not going to review every single track, but I'll skip around just to a few that I really enjoyed. I loved Element. Element was one of the tracks on here that not necessarily was super content packed. To me, this was kind of like Kendrick just kind of he was just kind of flexing, pretty much putting the industry on notice that like he knows he's that dude. And I love the line where he's like, on my last P, I tried to uplift the black artists, but there's a difference between black artists and whack artists, or something like that. But that line was pretty dope. I'm not sure if any of those lines in the song were maybe subliminals at, you know, any of his peers in specific, but he basically just kind of put them on notice. First listen on this album, normally when I listen to albums, just first off, I don't try to, I'll pick up on stuff if it jumps out at me, but I don't, like, I'm trying not to really decode so heavy. I just want to listen to it just to see how it sounds. But even doing that, like, there's certain tracks on the first listen that definitely jumped out. And the first two, actually the first one I'll mention that really jumped out to me, actually is a track right after Element, which is Feel. And when I listened to the album, you know, I made the mistake of reading reviews like while I was listening to it, and you know, people were decoding and giving all their theories and so on and so forth. And I guess like the first couple songs, it didn't really click to me. I didn't really see a concept or anything, but you know, I was only a couple songs in. But when I got to Feel, and this track was a real mellow beat, but like the content, I was like, all right, if there's a theme or something, this track definitely is one of the tracks I need to pay attention to. It's basically him like questioning almost everything, just like his friendships and the people he surrounds himself with, his status, and kind of him just venting about, you know, he's always there for other people, but you know, nobody's looking out for him. And it's just kind of like, you know, well, what's the point? Like, what's the point in me, you know, I'm trying to do good for everyone else, but, you know, what does this mean if no one does anything for me? But like, it was a real honest, just kind of like vent track. And it kind of further illustrates kind of like I said, that power struggle that he's having, to where it's like, he knows it's, you know, it's good to look out for people, but at the same time, like he's in his inner self, he can't help but feel like, man, do I really even mess with y'all like that? Like I'm probably wasting my time. Like, does it even really matter? But yeah, like this track was definitely one of the ones that stood out to me on the first listen. Going on down the track listing, Loyalty with Rihanna. This was an interesting track. It took a little bit to grow on me. I don't think the first time I heard it, I wasn't really feeling it too much. This is probably the one track on this album. Well, Humble's on the radio, but aside from Humble, this is the one song that I'm pretty sure will get radio play. Definitely has a real mainstreamish sound to it. Rihanna does a lot more rapping than she actually does singing. But even though it is I'm trying to think of a way to say this. It like I said, it's a very mainstreamish track, but it does somewhat still stick to the theme of loyalty, and you know, like, what is it that he pledges his loyalty to, and what is it that the people who surround him pledge their loyalty to. I think it's delivered in a very, very like accessible way, to where it's almost like DNA, as to where it's easy on the ears, but in the lyrics, even though it's not the most complex lyrically, you know, lyrical song, there's still content there. There's still a message there. You know, it does, to me at least. It's kind of surface level, but it's definitely there. And that theme of loyalty, it sticks throughout the track of them, like I said, questioning, what they're loyal to. Are they loyal to themselves? Are they loyal to this money? Or, pretty much they dive pretty deep into that theme. Like I said, it's delivered to me at least, and it's kind of surface level the way it's delivered, but there's definitely content there. Another track that stood out, even though this wasn't a favorite of mine, was the track Pride. Like I said, wasn't my most favorite track, but I definitely enjoy the content on here. This track also further illustrates, like I said, that power struggle, or that struggle between, spiritually I want to do right, but still kind of I still kind of want these earthly things. And I love how the track starts, hell raising, will chasing, new worldly possessions, flesh making, spirit breaking, which one would you lessen? The better part, the human heart, you love them or dissect them, happiness or flashiness, how do you serve the question? And pretty much like after that, it really goes into what that intro was talking about. Are you gonna stay on, your righteous path, so to speak, and try to be more spiritually sound, or are you just gonna go out here and chase, are you gonna chase the money, you're gonna chase the car, you're gonna chase the fame, and kind of leave your spiritual path, so to speak, behind. So yeah, like I said, it wasn't a favorite track of mine, but I appreciated the content and the theme throughout the track. And really that theme kind of, like I said, and I'm pretty sure I'll get to it, it carries throughout the rest of this album. The next track I will mention, I'm going to skip down a few. Actually, you know what? I'm going to mention Humble. Just a quick thought. When I first heard Humble, to be honest, I wasn't a big fan. In the context of the album, I like it a little more, but to be honest, it's probably one of my least favorite tracks on here, just for me personally. I don't know what it is about this track. I don't know if it's that piano. I don't know. There's something about this track I don't really, I just don't really, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. I can't, I don't know, it doesn't do it for me. But following Humble, we get Lust, which is, I mean, that's pretty much the theme of the track. If I remember correctly, this track, though, kind of also ties up, like I said, with that theme of chasing worldly possessions, I guess, and this specific would be lust. And then knowing that, you shouldn't be doing this, but hey man, it makes you feel good. And I'm trying to find a line. I'm pretty sure it was this. Yeah, here we go. We all woke up trying to tune to the daily news, looking for confirmation, hoping election wasn't true. All of us worried, all of us buried in our feelings deep. None of us married to his proposal, make us feel cheap. Still and sad, distraught and mad, tell the neighbor about it, bet they agree, parade the streets with a voice proudly. Time passing, things change, reverting back to our daily programs, stuck in our ways, lust. And I thought that was a dope way to end that verse, and that kind of summed up the song perfectly. It's like, we'll have these brief moments of, awakenings or whatever, where we realize, hey man, like there's a lot more to what's going on than us just chasing cars and chasing women and, doing all the, I don't want to say petty things we do, but just like regular day-to-day life. Like in the first verse, when he's pretty much talking about like a lot of Spurgeon, and talking about, hey man, just, you don't got to go to your job today, take off, smoke some weed, just chill out, relax. And then like he has another verse that the first verse is kind of from a dude's point of view about, like, don't worry about it, man, just go ahead, just flex, just spend, just have money. And then like the second verse kind of more from a women's, him rapping from a women's point of view, and he's talking about, hey man, just floss on the chicks that hate on you, go get a Visa credit card, scam and max it out, or something crazy like that. But like I said, he ties it up really nicely at the end, where it's like a lot of us claim we want change or we want things to be different, and we might wake up for a brief moment and realize, hey man, like all of this that we're surrounded by isn't good for us. But eventually you fall back to your ways. Like you go back to doing what you set to break away from, and kind of like how that lust kind of just keeps you trapped. And that also, like I said, this album is really content heavy. So I appreciated that track also. Skipping past Love, which I didn't care too much for. That was another mainstream-ish track. Triple X featuring U2. When I looked at the track listing, this track was screaming at me, and I was worried. I was like, I get it, Kendrick. You're definitely different than your peers. You tend to think outside of the box, but bruh, you and U2, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is gonna work. But to be honest, this is probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. One thing I like that this track did, also that DNA did. Actually, I meant to mention that earlier. Real quick on DNA. There are a couple tracks on here that have like these beat switch ups. And shout out to Mike Will Made It, who he produced a good bulk of this album, I believe. But like the track DNA, like I said, it starts off with the trap beat, but like towards the latter half of the beat, it just goes to, he kind of strips the beat down and you just get this mean drum pattern, and Kendrick just kind of just goes off. And I like the beat switch ups that happen on this album. And getting back to Triple X with U2, this track does the same thing, but it does it like 3 times. The first maybe about a quarter of the track is like this real, it's kind of a minimal beat, really, it's kind of sinister. And then the second part of the beat gets a lot more aggressive, and this is probably my favorite part of the song, where he's talking to a friend who like gives him a call because like his son had got killed. You know, he got mixed up with the wrong people. I think like he owed somebody money, so his son gets killed, and his friend, you know, calls Kendrick asking him for advice on how he should handle it. And he's like, you know, Kendrick, I know you're a lot more spiritual than me, so I need your help to get through this. And he's kind of looking for, you know, like a spiritual guide. And Kendrick's basically like, listen, man, I know I've been on this spiritual path, but dude, they just killed your son. It's time. It's time to strap up. Like, he kind of throws his whole spiritual righteous side out the window. He's like, nah, dude, it's game time. Like, it's revenge. It is what it is. So I thought that second part of the verse was really dope. And I just, like I said, I like how aggressive that beat gets because it matches Kendrick's flow and it kind of matches the theme of what he's talking about. And then the third part of this song, which is where you get to hear Bono from U2 a lot more. He adds a nice touch with his singing, and then the theme of the song kind of switches to more of a political side, and it starts off, Hail Mary, Jesus and Joseph, the great American flag is wrapped and dragged with explosives. And it kind of just goes into this just pretty much verse about the hypocrisy of America in terms of politics and race relations, and how we claim to stand for one thing, but if you really take a closer look, you know, our morals are definitely in question. We're not living up to the standard that we claim that we represent. So shout outs to U2 and for that collab. That it turned out a lot better than what I thought it would. Like, I'm pretty sure whether you are a U2 fan or a Kendrick fan, when you saw that on the track listing, you were scratching your head. Like, you didn't, none of us were sure if that was going to work out. And I'm pretty sure we all envisioned that collab going terribly, but it honestly was probably one of the best tracks on the album. Further going down, another track, especially on the first listen, that stood out really stood out was Fear. By the time you get to Fear, you're getting pretty close to the edge of the album. And this, for me, was the track that kind of solidified my feelings for the album and what I thought it really meant. And in Fear, the song is basically just 3 stages of fear at, different moments in his life. And it's a real kind of like soulful beat, but it's definitely like a real minimal, it's not a whole lot going on instrumentation wise, but sometimes less is more, and I think that works pretty well with this track, especially considering the content. I love the first verse where he speaks about fear as a child, being, afraid of his parents, and his, his mom saying, don't dirty up these Jordans, you just got them, and I better not hear about you doing bad in school. I better not hear about you humping some lady's daughter. I forgot it was something that verse about mom saying I better not catch you with so and so's daughter, and if you grew up like that, it's definitely a relatable track. Basically about your parents, putting that fear in you, like I better not catch you out here messing up, or you're gonna get it. So I love that first verse to me was just really that was really relatable. That first verse hit home pretty hard, and then the second verse goes to fear, him speaking of fear when he's a little older, probably around like I think it was 17 to be specific, and this goes from fear of parents to fear of him like growing up and kind of getting caught up in the street life, and fear of I might lose my life out here just messing around with the wrong people. I might get set up at a party, kind of. It's just kind of him going through life and realizing like, man, I can really get caught up out here if I'm not on my P's and Q's. And he really takes a nice in-depth kind of look at that stage of your life, when you're between like 16 and 18 and you're finally like just kind of getting your feet wet in life and figuring things out, and you're kind of moving out on not literally moving out on your own, but you're moving out in the streets on your own. You're just kind of out there living, but at any given moment you never know when you might get caught up in a bad spot. And then the last verse, which to me was the standout verse, and to me this verse pretty much, I'll say sums, correct word to use, sums up the entire album, and specifically this line where he says, I'm talking fear of losing loyalty from pride, because my DNA won't let me involve in the light of God. I'm talking fear that my humbleness is gone. I'm talking fear that love ain't living here no more. I'm talking fear that it's wickedness or weakness. Fear, whatever it is, both is distinctive. And to me, that, like I said, that line just tied together the entire album, as to where he's afraid that he's not going to get on the path that he wants to get on, because he's so trapped up in earthly wantings. And the reason I keep using earthly, when you pretty sure by the time, like I said, y'all have listened to this album by now, but shout outs to Kid Capri also, does a lot of like little cuts on this album. You get to hear his voice, but you repeatedly hear the term "what happens on earth stays on earth." And to me, that hearing that line over and over, tying it together with this like verse right here, kind of sums up, like I said, he wants all these earthly things, but in the end it's like you can't take any of this with you when you go. So like, why am I so obsessed with trying to keep a hold of these? And like I said, in his head, in his heart, like he knows that he shouldn't be holding on to these. They shouldn't mean that much to him, but it's embedded in him pretty much since he was born, that these were the things that he wants. These are the things that he's chasing, and he doesn't know how to let go of them and to kind of just, focus on the spiritual path. But like I said, that line specifically, that last verse, to me just ties up the album in a perfect like little knot and bow as far as the content and what I thought the album to me stood for. And then fast forwarding to the last track, Duckworth. It's a really dope storytelling track. Basically him telling the story of, how Top Dog, the head owner of his label or whatever, how he got started in the streets and how he was out there, he was out there doing what he does. And there was a KFC spot that he had robbed before, and he had thought about robbing again, but he didn't rob it. There was a cashier named Ducky who coincidentally was Kendrick's pops, and he didn't rob that KFC spot that time because Ducky used to look out for him. He would give him free food and free biscuits and all that. But the way Kendrick told the story, like it was a really dope closer to the album. Basically him saying like, it's wild how these two dudes were on two opposite sides of the spectrum, but the way the story played out, it resulted in me signing to Top Dog's label, when in reality, that situation could have ended completely different. Top Dog could have robbed that place, he could have shot Ducky, and you never would have had a Kendrick. Or maybe you would have had a Kendrick later down the road, but things probably wouldn't have played out the way they did. But yeah, that was a really dope track. And shout outs to Ninth Wonder on that beat. And that was another track that had a few different beat switch ups. And man, yeah, Ninth Wonder did a great job on every single beat on that track, on all the switch ups. And I'm also gonna post a link. Two Dope Boys did an article about Ninth Wonder. Let me pull it up real quick because I want to give the person who wrote it a shout out. The article is entitled "Ninth Wonder is a Legend, but the internet isn't ready to accept it," and the article was written by Andreas Hale. And I'm definitely going to leave a link to this for you guys to read. It basically talks about kind of how overlooked and underrated Ninth Wonder is, and kind of notes a lot of his contributions to hip hop, especially the underground, and how he really helped shape it in those earlier days, around when like Little Brother came out, and how Ninth has directly and just kind of indirectly helped mold a lot of people. Like he's had his hands in a lot of things that you may not know about, like I said, whether it be directly or indirectly, but he doesn't seem to get the credit, or he doesn't get mentioned. He doesn't get mentioned with like a Dre or Pete Rock or any of those guys. Not to take anything away from them, but he, in terms of contributions, in terms of just his product, his work speaks for itself. Like he's up there with those guys. He played a very influential part in like that underground hip hop sound, and he definitely is a legend. So I will leave that I'll leave that article in the description for you guys to check out. But yeah, those are pretty much most of the tracks that I'll go through. Like I said, just to tie this album up, I guess final thoughts. Like I said, to me, this album just represented the struggle between trying to do right by God, but also wanting it is what you want in terms of earthly possessions, and trying to, he's trying to rid himself of wanting the earthly possessions, but it's a struggle. Like he's drifting away, or at moments he feels like he's drifting away from God. He's just kind of doing what he wants, but he's trying to walk that line. He's trying not to get too caught up in the earthly possessions, because like they say, what happens on earth stays on earth. So it's just him in that struggle of trying to do right, but sometimes doing bad feels good. So it's, to me, that's pretty much to me what this album signified. I do think it is a lot easier to listen on the ears, like I said, compared to Pimp a Butterfly. Not that every song is like mainstream or necessarily trap sounding, but it's definitely at moments easier on the ears, even with the content. So I think he can reach a pretty big audience with this album just based off the sonics alone. Like normally people are more prone to listening to something just if it's easier on the ears, because most people tend to think production first and then, lyrics later. So in terms of that, I think he did a pretty good job that I think people will be much more willing to listen to this and digest it just because it sounds a lot more accessible. Lyrically, I don't think it's his sharpest work, to be honest. Not that it's bad lyrically, but I think he sacrificed just a little bit of lyricism and a little bit of sound, like experimentation wise, just to reach maybe a broader audience. But I think he walked that line pretty well. Like I said, it's not like it's super dumbed down or, it's not mumble rap or any ABC rhyme schemes, but it's content driven enough to where I think, quote unquote hip hop heads would appreciate it, but sonically still sounds good enough that like your average person would still give it a listen. Like he walked that balance, he walked that line pretty well between that. So yeah, man, all in all, good album. I'm not gonna say classic. I don't like throwing that term around. But it was definitely a good listen. And I can say out of all of the projects and just songs in general that I've heard from Kendrick, like this will probably be an album that I can see myself at least with a few songs. Like I'll go back and listen to this. To me, this album, even though as good as To Pimp or Butterfly was, to be honest, I don't find myself going back and listening to it all that often. I kind of have to be in a certain mood. This, I can go back and I can play a couple of tracks and, enjoy it pretty much like at any time. So solid album from Kendrick. Like I said, I'm not on the hype train, so I'm sorry if I don't love it as much as y'all do. Just to ruffle some feathers, I don't think it's better than Joey's album. Fight me. I love Joey's album a lot more than this, but they're both good albums though in their own right. And for Kendrick, I think this album already went gold. So for him, it's another notch on the belt, another quality release. Doesn't seem like so far he's had a misstep. So hey man, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. I think a lot of people appreciate the content of this album. I think a lot of people find it relatable, like I said, of that whole religious theme of trying to be close to God, but trying to do what you want to do. And that battle between you're straying too far away from the path, but, you kind of want what you want, and you're trying to walk that line, trying to find that middle ground to where you're not straying so far away from the path. But yeah, that's about it. Like I said, I'm not gonna go super deep into theories. I've already been talking about this for about 45 minutes or longer. But yeah, man, this was a solid listen. Something I definitely will go back and listen to. Moving on. I don't talk about many instrumental albums. I need to listen to more instrumental albums, but one person who normally pretty much any time he releases something, I'm always interested to listen to what he puts out. The homie Marcus D released a instrumental project, well, mostly instrumental. I think there's one song that actually has rapping vocals, but album is entitled Melancholy Prequel. Is it the Rising Sun Redux? I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Yep, Melancholy Prequel, Rising Sun Redux. So this is a re-release of a project that I believe he released a few years back, but it was a limited, edition. There were only so many copies. So he re-released the project and added a couple of songs, I think about 7 songs or something like that weren't on the first one. Some of these tracks I was familiar with, some I was not. So kind of for the most part, this to me felt like a brand new listen, because like I said, some of these I was familiar with, but some of them didn't. I may have heard them before, but it's just been a while. But yeah, Marcus D is a really, really dope producer, man. If you love more of that like jazzy hip hop style, dope instrumentals, just you can just vibe out to these, man. It's really chill, and he's actually a really diverse producer, which I don't think he gets a lot of credit for, because he can do this jazzy hip hop sound, which I hate to compare, but like that Nujabes type sound, like he does that really, really, really well. But then he can turn around and, if you listen to like his album Simply Complex, has a lot more of a traditional like hip hop boom bap sound to it. So he has like a lot of different variations and ways that he goes with his instrumentals. And then you get a project like Retroed, which is like video game themed, and he does that massively well. So he can hit a lot of different angles, put you in a lot of different moods. This album in particular, for me, this is the perfect instrumental or instrumentals, I should say plural, to just kind of just vibe out to, man. You put this on, your head start nodding, and you just chill, man, and you just vibe out to it. Good instrumentation all over this album, man. You got clarinets, got some bass, got some guitars, I'm pretty sure some strings and some keys, and it all comes together for just a real like peaceful a peaceful musical experience, I would say. Just to highlight some of my favorite tracks, Jazz Alytic, which is the first track on the album, the way the album starts off. That one is a nice, real chill, just kind of mellow beat. I think that's a flute in the background. Excuse me, I get my musical instruments messed up and mixed up, but I think that's a flute in the background. I love that track. Dedicated to You, a nice vocal sample. I feel like I know that singer, but it's just not clicking for me when I listen to it. But I like that track. It's a bit more upbeat, and that's another thing I appreciate about this project is like a lot of the tracks, some of them are really chill, they're really relaxed, really like a calm jazzy feel. But then you got other ones that definitely have more of an upbeat kind of groove to them. Tracks like I think Bar Loopin', I think that was one of them. That one was a bit more like upbeat, really up tempo track to kind of groove to. And let's see, what other tracks do we got on here? I actually took notes, so I'm just gonna read from the notes, because some of these tracks I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. Morning Light was another dope, really chill track. I love the saxophone that was in the background on that one. Reverie, if I'm saying that right, probably my favorite track on this entire project. This instrumental is just really dreamy. That's kind of the only way I can describe it. Really dreamy, just serene, peaceful, just, yeah, man, that's the perfect track to just kind of put that on and just chill, just get lost in the music. Tengu, love the horns on that track. That one is another one that's a bit more upbeat, has like a real upbeat jazzy feel to it, has a nice groove to it. Effervescence, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Tracks like this remind me of something that like I would hear on like a video game, maybe like an RPG. Like this is the track they play when your character leaves the hometown. He's about to head out on his journey, and he's taking that long walk down the road, and this is the track that is playing in the background. And really, I get that vibe with a lot. Not even just tracks on this album, but like just his music in general, especially the ones that are more, his projects that are more like, that have more of the jazzy sound to it. They have like that video game / like anime feel. Like you could easily hear these tracks in, like the background of a samurai anime or something like that. Mind's End, another good dope track, another good vibe out track. I'm probably gonna butcher this name of this track, Kichi Joji, if I'm saying that right. I love the airy vocal they have playing like during like the bridge. Really like the whole second. I tend to like the second half of this project a little more. Like I said, the first half has Jazzalytic, Dedicated to You, Morning Light, but like from Reverie all the way down pretty much to like the end of the album, I really enjoy like that half of the album a lot. Not to say that any tracks on here are bad. Some tracks I like more than others, but like the second half of this album to me just flows really well. It's a good mix between, real that calm, peaceful jazz and then more that upbeat kind of like groovy jazz hop. And he does a really good job of just that type of music, man. He's perfected it in my opinion. So yeah, I wanted to definitely give a shout out to him. Check out anything he's involved in. He works a lot with Substantial, who I reviewed on here for his album The Past is Always Present in the Future. They have a group called Bob Alloy. Give that a look. If you love video game music, definitely listen to Retro. That's probably still my favorite project of his. But really, just all of his albums are good, man. Like I said, Melancholy Prequel is dope. Pink Lemonade, which I believe he released last year, that was a dope album. The Lone Wolf LP, that's another dope album of his. He did a song with Blue, which was like heaven for me. That matchup was just perfect. But yeah, I'll leave a link to his Bandcamp. He's a super talented producer. He can do the video game theme music. He can do the jazz hop. He can do like your boom bap hip hop. He's got a lot of different, a lot of different styles, a lot of different variations. And like I said, if you love just instrumental hip hop stuff that you can, you just put on, just kind of groove to it. I feel like this. I don't want to make this sound like a diss, but this is great. This is great study music or music like I normally don't like listening to music when I write, but this is something I can put on and like it won't bother me. Because like I said, normally when I write, I like to have my head really clear, so I don't put on music, especially music with words, because my mind tends to wander off and I'm focusing on the words and the music and not on the words and I'm supposed to be writing on my page. But like I can put this on when I write and it doesn't bother me. It actually, in some ways, it kind of helps out. So yeah, man, if you like Nugent Best, if you like that kind of music, listen to people like Marcus D. Listen to dudes like DJ Okawari. Yeah, man, dope album. And didn't know my copy was gonna be autographed, so appreciate that. Appreciate that. For getting the signed copy. And shout out to Marcus D, man. He's a real approachable. I mean, not that I've met him in real life, but I've chopped it up with him a few times over the internet. Real cool dude, easy to talk to. He seems like just a regular, just a regular guy, just like me and you. Just so happens to be a super talented producer. But other than that, he's just a normal guy. But yeah, man, this project is really, really dope. I'm still waiting for Retro 2, man. I know you got it somewhere. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for Retro 2. I still listen to the first one. That album cover is probably still one of my favorite album covers. So I'm anxiously awaiting for a Retro 2. But yeah, man, Melancholy Prequel, Rising Sun Redux. I will leave a link to his Bandcamp page so you can give this album a listen. And as always, for this album, for Kendrick's album, man, if you like the music, if you enjoy the music, man, purchase, spend your money, support the people that still put out good music for the craft. People that definitely deserve the sales, who deserve the accolades, who deserve the recognition, man. Spend your money. It's not that expensive. If you can buy a video game, you can buy a CD. If you can buy shoes, you can buy a CD. But I guess that's about it for today. So Marcus D's Melancholy Prequel, Rising Sun Redux. Check it out. Kendrick Lamar's Damn. Good album. Check that out if you haven't already. Like I said earlier, shout outs to Open Mike Eagle and Baron Vaughn for their new TV show. Shout outs to the Colts and the Cowboys for doing pretty good in the draft, and shout out to the Spurs moving on to the second round. See if we take this all the way to the top. And like I said, man, be on the lookout for whenever I drop my next anime review, because I will have a guest and we will talk about a really dope anime that I enjoyed. And one last thing. I mentioned on the last podcast that by the time the next podcast came out, I would have a Twitter. All right, so I somewhat lied because I dropped the podcast since I said that. But I was a few days late, but I made it. So I do have a Twitter now, so you can follow me at Serial Sensei on Twitter. I'll leave a link to my Twitter down there so you can follow me, keep up with me. I'll also, post my podcast links there, as well as any other random things and whatever people post on Twitter. So check me out on there, man. I finally made one, trying to get out here in the social media world. So yeah, man, thank you guys for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy what I talk about or the fights that me and Anti-Cool talk about, man, give me a like, maybe a retweet, something, I'd appreciate it. But anywho, thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys have a nice weekend. Tomorrow's Monday, so hopefully you don't got to go through too brutal an episode of the Monday Blues. So, but yeah, Serial Sensei. I will catch you guys later.